Estefi, hello.
Hello, how
How
are
are you
you?
doing? Oh, good. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you too.
It's
Thank you
been
for
a
having me.
while. Oh,
I
of
know.
course. I'm so excited.
Yes.
I've
Okay,
been
hopefully
seeing
people
you.
can see me.
Yeah, I can see you at least.
Okay, cool.
So, yes. So before we even get started, where are you based out of right now? What is going on with you?
Yes, well, by the exposed brick, I am in New York City.
Of course.
So yeah, so I am here. It is freezing cold today, but it was such a
Oh
beautiful
gosh.
weekend. Like it was
Okay,
for the
awesome.
first time I think in forever, where like there was some sense of normalcy a little bit where we were like, wow, okay, we might be
Okay,
okay.
good. I
So,
think honestly, I've been waiting on the warm weather because that is,
yes.
I think, going to help kind of pull out of the slump, especially with staying inside so much. It's just like
Yeah.
between that and the cold weather, it is exhausting eventually. So I'm excited just to be
Yeah.
able to do things outdoors that can
Wait,
still be
where are you
fun.
located?
So I actually just graduated from Villanova last semester. So I'm staying here for like the last semester with all my friends.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Similar weather to you
Cool.
guys right now.
Yeah. Not the warmest, but it's okay. We're gonna get there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, awesome. Well, it looks like we got some people in here. So before we start,
Yes.
I'm gonna give you a little intro. But yeah, I'm really excited to have Steffi here with us today. I first met you when you came and talked to our beta class in the fall. And literally, people still talk about you and the advice that you gave them. And it's so sweet. I remember one day I hopped in Clubhouse and I see you talking to like multiple creators like from Collective. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So I know you
Yes.
have kind of a really awesome story about how you landed your dream job and how it maybe wasn't the traditional route that you were looking for, and it took some patience and it took some perseverance, but it's exactly what you needed and what you wanted. So I think that people will be really excited to kind of hear that advice from you. um,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Do you want me to kind of give my
Yeah,
how
so
I got here?
I would love that. So I know right now you are currently an account manager at Fullscreen within Warner Media. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that you have a ton of experience just in marketing and PR, brand partnerships, and just working with content creators and influencers. So maybe if you could start by saying like what your role is right now and what that kind of includes and how you got there, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And then there's like a little added bonus in there for you that I don't even think you know about yet. But
Ooh, okay.
so so yeah, so I graduated in 2019, December 2019. But before that I had been doing internships of all sorts. I think what was important for me is I did internships in a variety. Like I stayed within media because that's what I knew I wanted to do, but within that
Mhm.
I kind of allowed myself to explore different things. I did ad sales, I did more marketing, accounts, etc. And then summer 2019, I went to Fullscreen for like a little kind of like what you guys do of like exploring a bunch of different places and seeing what
Yeah,
might be a good fit.
exactly.
And I remember before I'd even left, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this place. Like it's so cool. Like I could
Yeah.
really see myself working here. I had no idea how I was going to do that, but I was like, I'm going to do it. So I connected with the recruiter, with one of the HR people, and it was just grinding from that point on
Yeah.
until I got what I wanted. So I eventually, like in September, there was the opportunity to meet some more people from Fullscreen in LA. I was in
Oh,
Atlanta, but I was like, you know
okay.
what? This is an
All right.
opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. So I booked a flight during fall break, went to LA with the sole intention of networking with these people.
Mhm.
Um, but I did it. Yeah, I don't regret it at all. It was super cool. And then it was December, and one of the people I had connected with was like, there's a job opening, like you need to apply right now.
Okay.
So I did, and I'm super grateful for them for, kind of doing that initial outreach. And it was an accounts role. And I interviewed, and towards the end of January, I got the job offer. And then they gave me a month to move because I was moving from Atlanta to New York.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where I've been for the past year. It's been amazing.
Wow.
yeah, so I've been working in account planning, so like account management,
Awesome.
at full screen for the past year, working with a variety of different clients.
Mhm.
And a lot of influencer marketing is what we do. So that's kind of where I've been focused in on with a bunch of different clients doing that.
Mhm.
And it's been super cool. And back in November, Fullscreen was acquired by Warner Media. So that
Okay.
opened
Yeah.
the doors for some more opportunities. And I think one thing that's important to mention too is like, just because you love something at first doesn't mean you have to stay there forever if it's not
Mm.
a good fit anymore.
That is
So
so
here's
important.
the part of the story that you don't know yet
Okay, I'm
is
excited.
I actually put my 2 weeks in last week.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, and I will be moving on to my next adventure. I am making the switch from account management into a more integrated marketing role, which is exactly what
Cool.
I want. So I'll be
Awesome.
going to Morning Brew. And
Oh,
so,
no way. Oh my
yeah,
God.
so
Yeah, I actually know a few people who recently transferred there. So I know that
really? Okay, well,
also,
we'll have
yeah,
to,
I'll
yeah,
have to
we'll have to
connect you.
connect. But
Yeah,
so yeah,
definitely.
you know, I still think I learned a lot in a year, and I was always
Mhm.
scared too to be in a entry level role and like be a year in and be that Gen Z that just like is there for a year and is like,
Oh,
okay,
that's
gotta
us. Like
go.
literally
Um,
whatever. Yeah, no, but
I
that's all.
know, but you know, you have to do what you have to do. So yeah, there was a lot of networking, and that's how I
Hmm.
got both the job that I'm about to start and also the job that I'm wrapping up. Which last point I'll make, and then I'll let you ask me
No,
any
I love it.
questions,
I love all this.
is when it comes to networking too. I think it's important to remind people that you don't just network with people that are higher up than you.
Mm.
This job that I just got at Morning Brew, I landed because I had been mentoring this girl who is
Mhm.
still in college, and she's an intern at Morning Brew. And I told her that, you know, there was this job that I was going to apply for, blah, blah, blah. And she's the reason that I got my first interview at Morning Brew. And
Huh.
she's younger than me, and she's an
Yeah.
intern, right? So I think that it's
Hmm.
really important. People are always like, I want to talk to the vice president of the company, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't have the pull that, you know, maybe someone who's in the
Yeah.
day to day with other people do. So I
And
think
there's
that's
so
super
many
important
people.
too.
Yeah, and there's so many
Yeah,
people asking them for those connections. So you're kind of narrowing
exactly.
your capability there. That's something we've talked about so much is just the
Yeah.
importance of not only vertical networking or even like bottom up networking, but horizontal networking, like forming those connections within your community, which
Yes.
is like a big that I mean that's our biggest thing at Collective is like kind of forming this community of creators from across the country and even now across the world, which is really cool.
That's
And
so
being
cool.
able to lean on each other. And I
Yeah.
think I've even seen people who like fully have already relied on each other and gotten really close just within the platform and then use that to get even like brand partnerships. I've seen people get jobs that way. So it's so cool to see how even in your case it's like top down networking, but it
Yeah.
ends up being super advantageous for you. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
No, I think community is super important, right? Because
So,
like this and I talked about this when I first met the beta class. Like we are in a people
mm-hmm,
industry. Like we are working
mm-hmm,
people with people at the end of the day. Like there's a lot of people doing the same jobs, but it's going to come down to, okay, so what do people think of Estefi as a whole, right? Not just
yeah,
how is she as an account manager? That's like
yeah.
2% of it, honestly, in my opinion. The other
Mm-hmm.
98 is like, okay, is she cool? Do we want to work with her?
Are you
Like,
going to
you know?
enjoy working with her 24/7? Because in jobs like this, there are times
Exactly.
when you are not off the clock. And like being in that community of people you enjoy working with can be just as valuable. If you're not going to like talking to your account manager, you're not going to like talking to someone who you're working with every day, you're probably not going to be nearly as productive either.
No, it's setting you up for a headache, a bad time.
Oh, yeah.
So,
No, that's a great point, though. That's awesome.
yeah.
Um, and so just even kind of on that same note, like what were some specific challenges that you faced kind of in defining your career path, whether that was in college, finding internships, coming out of college and kind of turning those internships into real opportunities. But where do you think you kind of had those learning points within your career path so far? And we're still kind of just getting started.
Yeah.
And then how do you think that people, how did you overcome them? And how do you think that other creators could kind of learn from that?
Yeah. I think, you know, at the end of the day, we all have like our goal, right? Like the big North Star of where we want to be. I hate the question of where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10
Oh,
years or whatever. But
Yeah.
you have to admit that like you do have an idea of where you want to be in a couple of years, right? And so
Hmm.
a lot of times I felt like I was kind of like not allowing myself to explore all opportunities because I kind of had a little bit of tunnel vision, which I think is
Yeah.
good, right? Like you don't just want to be applying to things that like if you got the job, you'd be miserable. But I
Hmm.
also think like, oh, if there's this cool company and it's not the exact internship that I want, but it's going to allow for some, networking and like you'll grow regardless. Like I think that's one big thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
another thing is, and it just took me time to learn, the reality of the situation is you have to be well connected. If you are not well connected, it's not going to go well for you. And I hate saying this because like I am from, immigrant parents. I moved to the United States when I was 2 years old. My mom's a stay-at-home mom. My dad works in tech. There was no like, oh
There,
yeah, go
no,
talk
it
to
wasn't an easy
yeah,
path for you to
yeah,
come
go
start off
talk
this.
to Joey
Yeah.
who runs Disney. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's not
Literally.
how that's not how it was for me. And so
Hmm.
I think it took me a little bit to realize, but I think like people ask me like, "Oh, how'd you do it? How'd you do it?" It's like I went to a basic small school. Like I don't like to think I'm anything extraordinary, right? But it's the fact that I have made connections with people like Thomas who just entered this group. I met him going to a networking like event for a weekend, and I went like
Hmm.
it was one of those things where we went above and beyond and we didn't just talk like during the conference hours. We like
Hmm.
decided to go explore New York City at night and like
Oh, that's
make
awesome.
jokes and like so
Yeah.
it's about meeting people and being intentional, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to just meet people just to meet people because they work at cool companies and you never know where they're going to be. Like I
Hmm.
think that was, I realized very quickly when I started getting a lot of rejections from internships, it's when I was applying blindly
Hmm.
without having any sort of connection. And unfortunately, like like I call them robots, but like these computers, they just like they filter out all of these people,
Oh yeah.
not even based on your skills. You could be like the next like Steve Jobs, but you don't know anybody there, so no one's going to take the time to look at your resume. So
Hmm.
that was something that was really frustrating to me and still is, right? Because I'm not connected to every single company I would ever want to be, but I
Yeah.
think I learned like through things like Clubhouse
Mm.
and just like any opportunity that's given to me, it's about maximizing it. And I think it's about, again, being human, having these interactions with people like Nedrick, who's also in here. Like I met him through a friend and now I followed him and I've stayed connected and we're in different industries, but I think
Yeah.
it's important to be friends, be cordial
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah.
So I think those are the biggest challenges. And then like taking those no's and allowing them to motivate you,
Mm.
and not taking them too personally. Like I was taking these automated letters that
Oh
would
yeah.
like automated
You gotta know in a
emails
row. This
so
will start to hurt.
personally.
But
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
true that like that it can be easy to let that weigh on you. But if you
yeah.
use that as a learning experience and even like reaching out to people and saying like how can I do better? They may not always answer, but if you're reaching out to their HR team or their recruiting team, how can I improve
Okay,
upon my application? Yeah.
yeah. I have a funny story about that one. So
Okay.
I applied to a company for a full-time role, and they said like they sent me the automated email, blah blah blah. I
Hmm.
really wanted to work for this company. So I
Okay.
sent them a follow-up email and I was like, just wanted to know like how I can improve, like what was was there a particular reason why I'm not no longer being considered for the role?
Hmm.
And they were like, yeah, we're just looking for someone a bit more senior, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
2 weeks, I was like, thank you so much, whatever.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, the job posting is still live. And I was like, okay, why is it? So I reached out to that same recruiter and I was like, hey, like whatever her name was, I noticed that this is still live. Like, I know you told me you guys were looking for someone more senior, but I still think I'm a very strong candidate. Like, please let me know if you guys would be interested in having a preliminary conversation.
Hmm.
Guess what? They
Oh, I
decided,
love it.
okay, sure, we'll have a conversation with you. Had I just taken that and thrown it in the pile of rejections and let it go, like
Yeah.
obviously nothing would have happened. But it was the fact that I was like, you know what? No, like I'm not going to take no for an answer without at
I
least
love
doing
that.
everything I could
Mhm.
to,
Well, that's
put
the
myself
thing.
in the best place.
Yeah, and people get so nervous to do that. But personally, my thing was always like, okay, I can do everything I can on my end. If I reach out and they don't answer, that's fine. But at least you can go to bed at night and say, I did everything I could for that
Exactly.
position. And that is what's the learning experience about it. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're going to get that every time, but if you're making those practices and you're making your name known, and after the automatic like filtering out, like you're still getting your name in front of them, that is so important, whether it's for now or it's for the future, because you never know what
Yeah.
fits to.
That's another thing. You never
Mm-hmm.
want to close a door, because you never know. Just because you don't get that entry level job doesn't mean that that same recruiter isn't working there 2 years later when you're looking for that like strategist role or like
And
that
yeah,
creative director role or whatever it might be.
and looking for someone who's going to take the extra steps and actually is clearly passionate about the position. If you're reaching
Hmm.
out, you're saying like, this wasn't just another like place I put my resume into, but this is somewhere I'm passionate about working. That really resonates with people.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
that's awesome. So how do you think we talk about these kind of like having those well-established connections within the industry, just because maybe your parents work within the industry or the school you go to works within the industry? How do you think, even based on your background of having immigrant parents going to a smaller school, how did your education positively or negatively affect, or your connections beforehand positively or negatively affect your opportunities? And how did you kind of make up for those? I know we just talked about networking, but if there's anything else you have on that, I'd be interested to hear.
For sure. I think I could speak to school for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I I went to a small school
Mm-hmm.
in South Georgia. Didn't really, it was just a small liberal arts school, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure like what opportunities would. I wasn't going to the UGA, right? Like I wasn't going to
Yeah.
the big university. And I honestly think that like, okay, people were like, "Oh, well, you might not get the same opportunities." Well, actually, I took advantage of that and became a big fish in a small pond, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and I think that it's not for everyone, right? Some people
Mm-hmm.
would rather compete with 10 trillion people, but I never allowed myself being at a smaller school. If anything, I just saw that as a reason to have to go above and beyond. And that is the thing, like nothing and not everything's going to be handed to you, but I think there's something beautiful in that story of like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? No, I didn't go to a school who like now the CEO of half of the media industry graduated from. No,
Yeah.
but it's like, okay, so I'm gonna be that girl that comes out of nowhere and is like, hi, nice to meet you. My name's Estefi. You don't know anything about me, but like would love to chat. Like I became
Amazing.
involved in
Yeah.
PRSSA
Mm-hmm.
and was like, okay, we're gonna do. We did these like tours of different companies. And so I was cold emailing all of these companies in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, hi, if I bring a group of 10 college students, would you guys be open to doing like a shadow tour of just
Huh.
like
Yeah.
maybe getting to talk to a few people? And not only was that helping me because I was the point of contact and like at the end of the day, like they now associated like Estefi with Georgia College, BRSSA,
Yep.
but additionally, I was helping other people, right? Because if your
Mm-hmm.
network that you're surrounded by is strong, like it's only going to help you. Not to mention, it feels good to do something for someone else, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk a
Exactly.
lot right now, about like doing things to better your career, but I think like also people will acknowledge the fact that you are willing to help someone else, right? Like I think I've always hated when people are like, "Oh no, I'm not going to tell you about this internship that I'm applying to because I don't
You are
want you to
only hurting
apply."
yourself. You are only hurting yourself.
Literally. So I
Yeah.
think those are the main things. I would say don't allow like if you don't go to a big school, make that a strength and not a weakness. And I think that took me a
Mm-hmm.
very long time to realize. Like even now, I've been out of school for over a year, and when people ask me where I go to college or where I went to school, I still don't really say my school. I'm like, "Oh, I just went to a small liberal arts school outside of Atlanta." And people are like, "Okay, what school?" And it's like, "Oh, I know I have to tell you, but like it's still like I'm not going to lie and say like, "Oh, it's not." I shouldn't be embarrassed, but I don't know. I also didn't allow just my school to be who I was. And so
Yeah.
that's what I encourage anybody who's listening. that goes to a smaller school, like allow that to be something that pushes you forward. Don't feel like, oh, I don't have that huge alumni network, I'm screwed or whatever. Let that actually motivate you to go above and beyond.
I think that is such a great lesson to learn too, is your situation is your situation, but your actions are going to determine your future. So what
Yes.
you're doing right now is so important. And I think, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who, like, even creators that we work with, that how previous generations, I think it was more that competitive aspect and like that lifestyle where like you are going for your job, you're planning on staying at that company for decades, and
Forever.
you do not want, yes, and you do not want anyone else to have that opportunity. You want that. You're not going to really open that up to other people necessarily. Our generation is built off that community growth, which I love. I love that about young people. I think everyone is kind of more interested in growing together and seeing other people succeed with them. And that is such an important thing to remember. So if you're that person who's still kind of going for opportunities and leaving other people behind, you're not going to have people who are going to open up opportunities for you either. And you're not going to have nearly as much fun. You're not going to make as many friends.
No.
You're not going to enjoy
It's
the
so
finish line.
cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I totally
no.
agree. And yeah, the last thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about was, this really ties into what you've been doing in Clubhouse. I literally see you in there every day talking with people. Even one time we were in there in a room together and just talking about like internship advice, and like all these people came in and offered the most amazing advice for people, which I absolutely loved. So I'd kind of love to hear more about your experience, why you've been tapping into that network to build your community, and how other people can learn from that also.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think part of it honestly came out of being in a pandemic and not being able to interact with as many people as I'd like to, and just kind of feeling a little lonely to a certain extent, and
Yeah.
just wanting to interact with people. At first there was no real intention. I joined Clubhouse back in August, where there wasn't really a lot of variety of
Early.
individuals.
Yeah.
um but the more it grew, the more it was like, you know what, this is just this it was so selfish. Like, I mean, the whole thing has been, I guess you could say, like, selfish. Like, I started because I wanted to talk to people, like,
Yeah.
about anything. And like, if
No.
I offered advice, cool. But like, there are people that have been tuning in and that I met through a joke room that I've done, or like that has been a networking room. Like, I think it's important, again, and I will say this over and over
Keep
again,
saying
to
it. I
be
love it.
to
Yeah.
be human, to be human, and to
Mm-hmm.
just be who you are. Like, who is a Steffi? Who is, like, whoever's in, the audience listening, like, who are
Mm-hmm.
you as a whole? And that's who people are going to care about. And so
Yeah.
I've tapped into this network and just made my name known, however, with no real intention, right? Like, okay, like, we can talk about internships, because that I have a story to tell about
Mm-hmm.
internships and that I can offer advice. But, like, we can also talk about whatever, like,
Yeah.
literally how your day was, or like, we've had discussions. One time we had a full on discussion about, is a pizza roll an Italian gusher? What is that going to do for
That's
anybody?
awesome.
Except it made
Yeah.
you laugh. Like, we're living in a world where, like, thankfully, like, the sun is shining today, like, things are getting better, but like, we're still living in a world where a lot of people are alone. And so just to be with around other people, and I think not having a real agenda behind what you're doing. Like, if you're on Clubhouse, like, just join rooms, like, about anything, or talk to anybody. There's people from all around the world. That's what I think is
Yeah.
super cool about Collective too, like, using the networks that you have to just meet new people. Like, to your point about Gen Z specifically, like, we like having large groups of people around us. And so
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. Like Val is in the audience, and I met her through Clubhouse. She's in the city. We ended up meeting. She works in something completely different from me. She's working on a social media app that's way more inclusive than something like Instagram. And like, we've been able to talk about that, even though, like, that's not an area, like, sex tech is not my area of expertise. But
Yeah.
it's so cool to learn about it, that now, like, if I meet someone on the street that is interested in something like that, I can be like, let me connect you to my friend Val. Just how I know
Exactly.
Val would be there for me, like, if
Yeah.
she knew that I could offer advice to anybody. So I would say, with
Mm-hmm.
things like Collective and Clubhouse, and just like all forms of community, just be authentically who you are, and everything else will
Mm-hmm.
follow suit. You have
That's
the skills, but so does half the world, you know? So like be
yeah.
authentically who you are and the right opportunities will come your way. I'm a firm believer in that.
Hmm.
So
I
that's
love
kind
that.
of what I've done with Clubhouse. I've done a little bit of everything with it.
Yeah, no, and it's so funny. I'll see you in there talking to people. One time, my sister pinged me to join a room, and you were one of the people talking. And I was like, oh my God, it's Estefi. I was like, I know her. And
That's
it was just
crazy.
like, it's just so cool to see how just putting that authentic energy out there and just being kind to people with no real motivation, like you're saying, like just go on there and talk to people. It's good for your mental health. You're making friends like virtually, you're connecting with people from around the world. It's an amazing experience. And then seeing how that authentic effort to just talk to people, make those friendships, and offer help where you can lead to something so awesome and like lead to things that will benefit you in the future. Just defines kind of, I think, how the future of work is going to look. It's be like
Yes.
you said, it's not going to be the skills in your resume. It's going to be your ability to talk to people and create those friendships and form those connections. So I
Mm-hmm.
love all of that. And
Yes.
I think before we finish off, if anyone has any
Mm-hmm.
questions, I would love to have them asked in the comments. Feel free to comment them and we can talk about
Yes.
them for a little bit. In the meantime, is there anything else that you kind of wanted to talk about, Estefi?
Oh gosh. I can always talk more. I think I saw someone earlier in the comments saying something about like yeah, like that's the boat I'm in right now trying to find
With
internships.
internships, yeah.
Um and to that point in your life, I'll just say because this was something that happened to me, like obviously we've highlighted all the amazing stuff. My mental health struggled severely when I was going through especially like finding my first entry. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself too. That would be like my biggest piece of advice because you also and don't compare yourself. Like I don't want someone to listen to this and be like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm not like Estefi." Well, yeah, because you're not me and I don't want you to
Yeah,
be me. Like
exactly.
I want you to be you. And so I think it's really important to take care of yourself and make sure you're watching out for your mental health. Make sure yeah, like you got
Yeah,
rejected
Sid,
from a program yesterday uh, do you know how many programs I've been rejected from? So many. And so
same.
I think
So many. Yeah.
allow that to, take a second, mourn, whatever you need to do, cry if that's what's going to make you feel better, and then move on. Like move on, don't forget about it, right? Because you want that to motivate you, but then also like check in on yourself. Look, it sounds so stupid. Look at yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, I think her name is Sid. Like, you know what, Sid? Today was not the best day, but I'm alive. Tomorrow will be better. We will find something. And like that obviously wasn't meant to be for you because if it was, like it would have worked out. And you never know. Like it could work out later. It could just never work out. But allow yourself to, feel whatever you're feeling, but then check in on yourself. Give yourself those mental health breaks. If you've been
Yeah.
applying for 17 bajillion internships and you've been behind your computer all day, like take a second to scroll through TikTok or call a friend or lay and stare at the ceiling. Like
Literally.
allow yourself those moments because too we're also so young. Like live. Like I think if we've learned anything from this year, it's the fact that like tomorrow is not guaranteed for any of us, right? So yes, you have to worry about your future, but also worry about your present self because also
Mhm.
I've noticed like I've gone into jobs feeling terrible because I'm coming off of such a terrible time that I can't even
Yeah.
perform to my max. So just like that would be my number one. If no one gets anything out of this, like make sure you check in on yourself because
That's
you're
so
not going to be
important.
able to perform and create. A lot of people on here are creatives. Like if you are not in a good headspace, you're not going to be able to create quality stuff that you're super proud of. So I think we have a question though, so I want to make sure.
Yeah. Sid said, but how do you find ones that can be remote if you don't have the ability to go somewhere for an internship? My school has a job portal, but I feel like there's barely anything for my situation. Um, I think one thing I've learned, and kind of this ties into the mental health conversation because I kind of had to check myself and be like, you can't say yes to everything because once you're
Oh my
virtual,
gosh, wait, I have to interrupt. My grandma's on here.
oh my
Hi.
God,
Hola,
hello.
nena. Okay, keep going.
Stop. I
Sorry.
love
I
that.
just
No,
think that's
that's
amazing.
that was awesome. Okay, cool. But yeah, no, what I found when we went virtual, and I don't know what industry you're in, Sid, I would actually love to hear that.
too.
But it kind of, a lot of people realize once you're leaving the office, you can still be productive from home, and you can still be productive from across the country. I know even with like collective, like I'm working from Pennsylvania, half our team is in LA, we got people in New York, like we got people from everywhere. But as long as you are continuing to be productive at home, you can do that. And I think a lot of people realize that. So I took to LinkedIn. I took to a ton of different places and started applying to jobs. Eventually I found Collective, which is a great way to find a lot of freelance work they were doing right now, and job matching and just connections with brands. You said film, but you do directing, writing, and producing. Well, first of all, sign
Yeah.
up for our platform if you haven't yet. We
Yes.
would love to connect you, kind of build within that community. But I think you'll find like directing, writing, producing, there are a lot of virtual opportunities out there. And ways that you can find those aren't just going to be applying to those jobs, but then reaching out to the HR director there, reaching out to people who can like start those conversations, who maybe work there right now and won't be hiring you, but could give you some advice. So I'd love to hear your advice as well, and just that virtual
Yeah.
jobs. But I think there are a ton of opportunities right now to find those virtual opportunities if you're looking the right place.
Yeah, so this year has obviously been a mess, but if there's one thing that has come out of it that I think is incredible, is that people are finally realizing that you can produce just as high, if not higher quality work, being remote. And so there are more opportunities now than ever, to work remote. And so I would say apply to everything that you see that you think fits. Don't just stick to the job board. Don't just stick to LinkedIn. Also, like, if there are companies that you really like, connect with someone who's more entry level, or that you like love what they're doing, and just ask them for 30 minutes to do a virtual coffee chat and just talk to them. And then you never know, there are a lot of opportunities that never end up on those job boards. Also, go directly to the websites of these companies, right? And go to their careers page. A lot of times they're not linked or as up to date on these job boards or on LinkedIn and all of these things. So I would say those are going to be really big. There was obviously a little bit of a downfall in more of the production side of things during the peak, but we're obviously seeing more opportunities. There are a lot of, I have a lot of friends that are right now working as production assistants and things like that. There's like specialty COVID production assistants right now, and things like that. So I would really look into production assistant jobs, and continue to write and grow on the side, right? That's another thing too. If you just want to get into the entertainment industry, don't be afraid to apply for a marketing position, because you can still be writing and directing and doing your own things on your own time, but then you're making connections somewhere else too. So if it's something that you read this job description and it sparks something in you, and it's not necessarily aligned with what you see yourself doing in 10 years, don't worry about it. Apply anyway, because you never know, Sid. So yes, and definitely if you're not on Collective already, make sure you sign up for it. I mean, that's going to open so many doors for you. So, and I think we have another question from Jasmine.
Jasmine. So Estefi, what are your thoughts on unpaid internship? I'm interested to hear this
one. Okay. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll keep it brief because I know we're over time. A lot of times being able to take an unpaid internship comes out of place of privilege. And I understand that that's not possible for everyone. I personally am not a fan of unpaid internships. I don't believe in unpaid internships. I think that the only reason you should be doing an unpaid internship is because you have the opportunities financially to support yourself. Otherwise, do not ever do something crazy just to take this internship. Time is money. I don't care if you're 17 or if you're 42. Like, your time is valuable. We all only have 24 hours in a day, and you are obviously bringing something to the table that they're interested in incorporating. Especially if they're bigger places, guys. Like, why? You know they have money. Don't even try to tell me that they don't have money. So in my eyes, like, the only reason to take an unpaid internship is you believe that it is the only thing that is going to get you to the next place that you need to be. And in that case, negotiate too. Just because it's unpaid doesn't mean you can't also, like, stand up for your, always negotiate, especially women and women of color. women in general, but especially women of color, are always afraid to negotiate and ask for more. If you've already been offered the job, they're not going to retract that offer just because you ask if there's an opportunity to negotiate. But if you're taking an unpaid internship, ask if there's the possibility of a stipend moving forward. Can you establish KPIs, these key performance indicators of like, okay, if I hit X, Y, and Z for you, can there be some sort of stipend of X amount of money, right? Like, it doesn't always, and get that in writing and then just move forward from there. So I would say, like, a lot of times some people can afford to take unpaid internships, but even those people, it is still their time. Like, I still believe in it. So just be very careful and don't let people take advantage of you. If you have a gut feeling that this doesn't feel right, it's not right, and trust your gut. So I will stop it at that because I want to hear your thoughts too, but those are my thoughts on unpaid
I
internships.
could not agree more with you. I think the biggest thing we of just kind of saying how important it is for you to advocate for yourself. People get very nervous to do so. And I know even in the past I have, being a woman in the industry, and I know it's even harder for women of color and people in disadvantaged positions where they have been underrepresented and are kind of given this weird like narrative of like, just be happy you're there, which is never fair and never justified. And you should never let anyone try to feed you that narrative. But I think the biggest thing you can do for yourself and the best way to make other people respect you is to advocate for yourself. No one is going to stop liking you because you asked to be treated the correct way. And if they do stop treating you well because of that, you're probably not in the right place. So I think
Get out, run.
yeah. And I mean, I'm saying that as someone who has worked unpaid internships before. And the reason I did that was I was working multiple jobs and I was finding other ways to make up the money while I was saving, and just eating ramen for most meals. But you shouldn't have to do that. And the only reason I did that was because it was something I was passionate about and it led to a paid opportunity in the future. Just thinking about even like freelance work. That's kind of what I'm referencing, where like I worked that internship and now I can do freelance work and I can do stuff that I'm paid for in the future. But I completely agree with you. It is such an important lesson to learn while you are young, while you feel underrepresented or misrepresented, to have a talk with yourself. And ego aside, anything aside, it's always going to be important to put yourself in a position where you're asking for the respect that you deserve. So
Yes, never allow for someone else to set your worth, like you just got to be confident in what you're doing. And I think to the point of a lot of creatives, a lot of people I know, like in collective, you all are definitely helping, but a lot of people don't even know like what they should be charging, what they shouldn't be charging, things like that. All I can say is you're probably way too talented to be doing anything for free. And if you're doing it for free, it is because you are choosing to do that because you want to help someone out, not because someone is saying like, oh no, we'll take it, but at no cost. Like, no,
yeah.
that's just not okay. And I think, everyone that's here is very talented. And so you need to be super proud of your work, but also someone else needs to be like, you know what, I see the value in you. And it just feels good too. Like I've always said I'm not very motivated by money, but I understand that, I have to keep a roof over my head and I have to feed myself.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to just, it feels good. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say the unpaid internship thing, I wouldn't completely rule it out, but be very, 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 very picky. And always
Yeah.
advocate.
And I think either way, it has to come from, I have like so many sounds coming from outside my house right now.
No, you're good.
Either way, I think that just has to come from a standpoint of mutual growth also. So when you're in that position, even if you are getting paid, how are they working with you to work on what you're passionate about to get you to your goals? Are they checking in with you and saying, is this job satisfying you? Is this helping you reach your ultimate goals? Because if they're at this company, they have the resources to help you and they have the time to help you. It's just making sure that you're making your voice heard. And sometimes that means taking the first step yourself, which is more than fine. But as long as there is a sense of, I'm putting in this work for your company and this is how it's benefiting both of us, that is so important. And
Yes.
it's not
Yes,
greedy to
yes,
ask
yes.
for that. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I absolutely love every conversation I get to have with you.
Yes.
This is helpful for me. This is helpful for everyone who is in the audience today, and I really appreciate people interacting and asking questions as well. We're going to be doing this every Monday, so please join us. We're bringing in more people, having lunch, just starting off our week together. So I really appreciate you joining us this week, Estefi, and best of
Oh my
luck at
God.
Morning Brew. I'm going to text you
Thank
when you have it,
you.
but that's super exciting. So
Yes, yes. Well, thank you all very much. My DMs are open. And so if you ever have more questions, I will do my best to get back to anybody. But yeah, I just don't be a stranger. If you have more questions, I'm happy to hop on a call or just chat a little bit more. But thank you for having me. This was amazing. I had a blast. Yes, every time
awesome.
we
Me
chat is
too.
amazing.
Yes.
So I love supporting Collective. I think what Collective is doing is absolutely amazing. So
Thank you.
I'm excited to see where the future is very bright for Collective. This is just the beginning.
Love that. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. We love having you along
Thank
with us for the ride.
you.
All
Yes.
right.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.
Have a great week. Thanks, guys.